Hey everybody, and welcome back. Today's a continuation of the Can We Be Friends with White People video that I did last time. This is Tucker Carlson actually interviewing the author of the op-ed piece from the New York Times. I'm going to have a little listen to what Tucker has to say, and then I'm going to come back to you and then we will discuss it. So without further ado, let's dive right in.
Ekow Yankah is the author of that New York Times piece. He's a professor at Shiva University's Benjamin Cardozo School of Law, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So what struck me about this piece, a couple of different things, but the first thing was the generalizations about a racial group based on their race. And I grew up, I'm probably not so much older than you, in a world where overt expressions of that were not acceptable. You weren't allowed to generalize on the basis of race because the assumption was each person is an individual and you judge each person by the choices he or she makes. I don't understand when it became okay to generalize about racial groups.
Well, I mean, to me, a strange way to put the question. I mean, while it's the case that we all hope that we can be judged for who we are, I think while some people have the luxury to be raised only being told to look at individual people, it should be no surprise to you that black people, in particular black men, have been taught forever that they have to be careful how they behave around white people, that the way they behave will be interpreted differently, that when they misbehave, it'll be punished differently, that if they laugh too loud, if they walk into a nice store. So with all due respect, Tucker, what was true for you has never been true for lots of people.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of ways to respond to that. One, on a factual basis, and in truth, in a lot of places in this country, the main threat that African Americans face is not from white people, as you perfectly well know. But beyond that, the idea that you could understand a person's motive merely by knowing his race dehumanizes that person. It's the definition of racism, and you're engaging in it in the New York Times, and nobody says anything about it. And I just felt it was worth pointing that out and asking you if you feel it's okay to generalize about people you've never met, about whom you know nothing beyond what they look like, and say, I know who you are and what you believe.
So I first want to respond to the first comment. I think is ought not be let lie. While it's true that, of course, people of color face threats from other people of color, it's also true that white people face the overwhelming threat from white people. That is,
right.
People face threats from who they live beside. So
That's right.
I find
exactly.
But I think it's fair to point out that we oughtn't be distasteful and say things like, well, the great threat. It does feed a certain uglier narrative that we don't want. But to your core point
wait, hold on. Why does the truth ever feed a, quote, ugly narrative? The truth is worth telling for its own sake because it's true.
You're welcome to tell the truth, but it is deeply suspicious that people are so quick to say things like the main threat facing African Americans is other African Americans, but you never hear anybody say the main threat facing white people is white people. Right, so there is no phrase white on white crime.
I don't know. I mean, people say that. I mean, I guess the point is,
Tucker,
you don't face a threat from an entire racial group. You face a threat from individuals who've made individual choices.
Well, we should turn to that. But just in closing, I should say we should be honest and not pretend that there is a phrase like white on white violence, right? That phrase doesn't exist for very particular reasons.
Well, we can invent it here. But I guess the point I'm making is that you should never generalize about people on the basis of their skin color because it reduces them to the sum total of their skin color. And again, that's the definition of racism. And you're engaging in it in this piece. And I don't think it's helpful. I think it's wrong.
Well, isn't that fucking interesting? Do you see that there when he said... Well, let's start off with the fact that the author of the piece has been deflecting Tucker's question since the beginning of the video, since Tucker asked it. Is it okay to broad generalisation about a race specifically? And he's just deflected that question. And when Tucker there turned around and said, well, it's a classic definition of racism, he shrugged. These fucking racists are the ones that are teaching. This is despicable and this is sickening. But let's see how much more deflection this fucking wanker can do. And trust me, he's a fucking wanker. So let's continue.
Well, so I just entirely deny that. What I said was that you should generalize and dislike people because of their skin color. What I do think is true is that in a world in which things have gotten ever more dangerous for people of color, it is in fact the case that that undermines our ability to trust each other across racial bounds.
Hey retard! Yeah, you retard! Well, that is just fucking retarded now, isn't it? Right, did you not see the look on Tucker's face there? He went, what? But anyway, this guy, this professor, he is a fucking moron. Right? He's again deflecting the question. He's working around it, and he's just beating about the bush and pissing about. I don't know why Tucker is not fucking running over the top of him right now, but still. Tucker asked him whether it was okay to make broad generalizations about a race, specifically because of their colour. And he has refused to answer that question, so that tells you a fucking great amount about what kind of person he is. Now, this guy pisses me off, and I have watched this whole thing to the end, and I really don't want to do it again. I suppose I'll leave a link in the description to see this one. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please leave your comments for me. Let me know what you think about the blatant deflection of the question and the blatant racism of this professor. I personally think he's a scumbag, but that is my opinion. So anyway, let me know what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know your opinion on this. I'd like to thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alexander. I'll catch you in the next one.